this is obviously like a bigger thing than just me doing yoga. It's something that people do want to learn, and something that people should not ever feel like they can't do it. And like, that's my mission, is to just get stroke survivors to see that they can potentially exceed any expectation that they might have had of where they could be. They can keep going. And that's what yoga does, really, is it gives so much hope.
This is the Recovery After Stroke podcast with Bill Gassiamis, helping you navigate recovery after stroke.
Rachel Jarmusz.
Yes.
Did I say it good?
It's good.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
The Australian accent's got a way of kind of sharpening off and rounding off and blunting off words. So I thought I'd better just check in. I didn't want to make it sound too Australian. Hey, tell me a little bit about what happened to you.
Okay, so I had a stroke 14 years ago. I was 25 and I was on a roller coaster and got off the roller coaster and could not get my balance, could not quite find my center. I didn't know what was going on. So their emergency first aid came towards me and called 911, said she's having a stroke. Honest to God, I didn't know what a stroke was. I was 25. I had just had a baby. It wasn't something that was on my, health list or scare list or whatever. So then I'm paralyzed on my left side.
Yeah. So did you feel unwell on the roller coaster, or did you just feel unwell when you got off?
I didn't notice anything on the roller coaster, no.
Okay.
Just when I stepped off, the moment I took a step off, it was like, I don't really quite know how to describe it. It's almost like you feel drunk or incredibly high and you can't quite, like, the world is just like moving and you're not. And I kept telling my husband at the time, I need to sit down. I just need to sit down. And I sat down on the concrete because, like, it felt like the world was like moving around me. It was a weird feeling. It was very strange.
And what was the underlying cause?
It's carotid artery tear that then formed a clot. And then the next day, like, it went on and I had a massive stroke.
So the day before the roller coaster ride, did you notice anything that you might have thought was a little bit weird or?
No, I was, no.
And could the roller coaster ride have created the tear? I know
Yes.
we're speculating, but I'm just curious about how a perfectly normal 25-year-old gets on a roller coaster and then comes off and then gets diagnosed with having had an ischemic stroke, right? It's just, I know it happens, but it's just so, it is odd. It's not
kind of odd. Yeah. My neurologist ended up saying that it wasn't that rare to have a carotid tear from a neck turn or a sneeze or something like violent. The weird thing was that he said it should have just torn and healed, because that happens. In my case, I had just given birth, and I kind of think that I was on birth control, and that played a part in my body's ability to heal. And like, the blood was thicker, it formed a big clot, broke off. So that to me is what, like, because they did so many tests, like, I didn't have high cholesterol, I wasn't overweight, I didn't have high blood pressure, none of that. So, like, what the heck happened? I mean, I don't know. It was like a aligning of the stars that just, my blood was just thick enough to just clump up. And yeah.
So then were you taken to hospital from the place you were and then admitted into hospital?
Yes.
And how long did you spend there?
I was in the hospital, I think I think it was about maybe 3 or 4 weeks. I was in the ICU for a week. Then I spent another 3 weeks just in the hospital. Then I went to like inpatient rehab for 30 days and had to do like that whole stint to learn, everything. And then I went home.
How old was the baby?
2 months.
Wow.
2
So
months, yeah.
that would have been difficult, being a young mum, baby at home, and then you have to spend quite some time away from the baby. Or was the baby with you? Were you able to at least have the baby with you?
No, he was not. He actually left with some family out of the state because we were not, my husband and I at the time were not from that state. So both of our families were outside of the state. So the kids left. And that was honestly probably the hardest thing about the whole thing was that your life just changes in a second. Everything's different the next day. Like, what the heck?
Yeah. And then what was it like getting back home after a month and transitioning back to being a mum after you're being cared for, but in a month's time you're not completely recovered from stroke,
right.
and you have to be a mum.
Right. I actually remember the day that I came home from rehab and like I saw a pair of my shoes on the floor and like it immediately made me start to like feel depressed because I knew that I couldn't wear them. And they're sitting there as if I had just left, like, to go out to the store and come back, and everything was different. It was almost like an out-of-body experience. It's like surreal. Like you don't even know what to do. And strokes are so weird because like you don't ever really recover in a way. Like I think I kind of thought like I'd go home, I'd get a few good night sleeps and I'd be like fine, that never happened. So it's just kind of an ongoing realization like I'm different. My life is different, and it's a hard pill to swallow, kind of. It was hard. It was hard. It was very
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what you said. How long has it been since that day?
14 years.
Yeah, 14 years, and you're still kind of feeling like you don't really ever recover. But can we put that in context? Can we kind of give people a little bit of hope? Now, you haven't quote unquote recovered, but there's a big but there. Tell me about like what life is like though, because I also feel the same thing. My whole experience started in 2012, and I'm not ever really going to get back to my old self, whatever that means or whatever that was. There's me there. I'm me and I do me things, but then I have to change. I've changed a lot of things simply because I just couldn't persist in trying to be what I used to be, because it's just not going to happen. And I actually don't mind the opportunity to evolve. So,
Right? I think that's a really beautiful way to put it. That's a really beautiful way to put it, that I say that I'm not fully recovered, and some people might look at me and think, oh, she's got a long way to go. Or some people might look at me and say, wow, she's recovered a lot. But to me, it's not about getting somewhere necessarily. You know what I mean? It's just about accepting what is right now and kind of embracing this opportunity to be a new person. I'm different, and it's not a bad thing, quote unquote. I have to live a little differently. I can't do things that I might have done before, but maybe those things weren't great for me. And now I'm choosing different things, and, found yoga. And a big part of yoga is just like this idea of the power of now and being here. And I may not be what I used to be, but this person, I often say that like, I'm a better person post-stroke. I'm stronger. I'm more patient. I have developed a sense of empathy, a sense of real, true compassion, and like self-love is a big thing that like starts to develop out of this. You learn boundaries, you learn self-care, you learn how to say no, you learn what you want to do, what you really don't want to do. Things kind of simplify in a weird way that's tragic and really depressing, but like kind of hopeful. Like I think like it's cool. It's
Yeah. So what's the kind of depressing part? Let's see if we can kind of dive into that a little bit. The reason I ask is because it seems like there's mixed feelings in there. You're talking about hopeful and depressing, all in the same three words, you know? So
yeah.
how can you give me a little more insight into why there's so much happening in those three words? Why is it so deep?
Well, I think the way that I look at it, at least, is like it's like the yin and the yang. It's the dark and the light. It can be both. It can be hopeful and tragic. It doesn't have to be one thing. And that confuses people, I think, because people often want to have like, well, when am I going to get better? Tell me, you know, if what's going to happen and am I going to get this result? And I'm kind of like, you don't really know. And there may be things along the way that are not so great, but like that's part of the whole process, is that it can be sad and uplifting. It can be depressing and happy. It doesn't have to be one thing. And it can, to me at least, encompass all of these big emotions. And I mean, it has to, because it's what I'm feeling. So
Yeah.
it's
I think it's not uncommon what you're saying, because I relate exactly to what you're saying. So I've had, say, I'm not sure if anyone's ever done a massive, fully immersive 4-day intensive course of anything. And for me, what the time that I go back to was about 2012, 2013. I did some personal development courses straight after I went through the first two bleeds in my brain. And then I was discovering that it was the best thing I had ever done. And there's a lot of aspects of it that I hated. And what I didn't have then was the nuance to understand where the hate was coming from and what the best thing was. So the best thing was that it was making me feel for the first time in a long time that I was stretching myself, learning something useful that I was going to apply, that was going to make my life better. The part that I was hating was that it was really, really hard, made me uncomfortable, and I didn't know where it was heading. And my head was the thing that that brought to light that discomfort, the hate, those types of words, where it didn't allow me to fully sink into it, because it wanted to resist a little bit. It wanted to say, well, hang on a sec, we're not comfortable with this. We don't know this stuff. We're not familiar with this stuff. Just, this sucks. You know, it's too hard. And then the other part of me, my heart, which is loving it, is going, no, we need to be here. You know, this is amazing. We're learning new things. We're meeting great people. So there was this, you might call it yin and yang, and I don't even know if I'm describing yin and yang, but it was a separation of my intelligences, one trying to continue to live the old way, and one going, no, there's got to be a new way.
well, it's like the constant head and the heart debate. It's like your head is telling you one thing, your heart is telling you another, and which
That's
one
it.
do you listen to? And you always go with the heart. And often the head is going to say, well, that's stupid.
Mm.
You should do that, or, you know, whatever. But it's a matter of like, and it's literally the same thing with stroke recovery, because it's like, it sucks. It really sucks. There's days that like, it just really sucks, and like pain and just, but then it's like, maybe you take a day like to rest. You feel better the next day, and you realize that like your body is cueing you how to like move. And like sometimes you do need to slow down and not do as much. And sometimes you need to put yourself out there in situations where you might not normally do it. So I think it definitely is not always roses and sunshine, but it's what we need the most for, I think, like you said, evolution, for evolving into this different person. You know, it, to me, it's better. I don't know, some people don't like the verbiage of better or worse, but it's more evolved. It's more mindful. You really, after you have a stroke, you really have to think about what you're going to do, because you physically can't do things. So like it's a matter of like, is my body going to move today, or am I going to maybe not do X, Y, and Z, you know? And you strip away things that end up like not even really mattering in a way. You're like, why did I even need that? And your life like just cleans out, and it's such a beautiful thing. It really is a beautiful thing. Like it's
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
Hello and welcome to episode 246 of the Recovery After Stroke podcast. My guest today is Rachel Jarmusz, a yoga teacher who had an ischemic stroke caused by a vertebral artery dissection while on a roller coaster ride at age 25, just a few months after her baby was born. Yeah, focus is really beautiful, and it is really good when things just fall by the wayside simply because they can no longer actually exist in your world, because they create pain and suffering and annoyance and all those sorts of things. I know there's lots of times that I did or didn't do many things which are difficult for people to understand, or for me to explain, or my family to kind of roll with. But it was, well, that thing that you're talking about, I simply cannot participate. It's not that I don't want to or wouldn't have participated if I had the opportunity, but right now the way I'm feeling is I just can't be there. So I'm not going to put myself through the torture of doing something that used to be pleasurable just so that I can continue. There's your doggy.
yeah.
I'm not going to continue to do something that used to be pleasurable just so that I can continue to
Suffer, really.
Yeah, well, to suffer, yeah, and to hold on to something that is from my past, It's not going to be possible to integrate into my new way of doing things. I just can't. Things are different. They've changed.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like everything. Yeah. Oh.
So tell me about your transition from, we'll call it your old life, to your new life. So you've come home a month later, you're dealing with a baby, and I imagine at 25, were you fairly newly married?
I was, yes.
Tell me about that. How did that go? Because that would have been complicated.
Right. Yeah, it was complicated to say the least. We were newly married and lived in like Southern Illinois. And after my stroke, I actually made the decision to move back home to my hometown, which is Chicago. And we got divorced because it wasn't an environment that I could heal in and be this better evolved person that I needed to be. And I knew that. And so that was one of the first like cords that had to be cut. And just, I mean, that was hard. I just left, and kind of tried to pick up the pieces living with my parents for a while. And like that, my parents were very keen on getting me into like the best rehab facilities. And ironically, the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago is like one of the most well-known stroke rehabilitation centers. So I started doing rehab there. And then I just continued to do rehab for years and years and years. Until I kind of tired of that and then found yoga.
Right.
And then the whole story kind of changed.
So when you left to go back home, did you leave with the family or on your own?
I lived with my mother. Yeah.
And your husband and your child?
No, just my children. My husband was still.
Okay. So you're newly married, you're dealing with a stroke, you're dealing with a brand new baby, and you're dealing with now having to change your living environment because it was thought at the time that the best place to be was in this particular rehabilitation
Yes.
place.
Yes. Yes. So we're there, all three of us, my two kids and myself in my mother's house, and having a wonderful time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doing like the little buses that pick you up for rehab. They come and they get you because you can't drive for a period of time. And I did that for what felt like forever, just weeks and weeks and weeks until I could walk without a cane. And then, like I said, I stumbled upon yoga and saw that there was this whole other world of, wait a minute, I can do that. I can, like stand on my head or do a back bend or do something that like feels really good on my body and calm my mind and like have better posture and have more energy and all these things. So that's kind of when things really started to shift for me. So in terms of being more like okay with things and finding a peace in like, this is my life now. This is my life, and it's making me feel really content right now. Like I'm happy, and I attribute a lot of that to yoga and the principles of just like acceptance and mindfulness and being here now, which is why I think it's such an important thing to teach stroke survivors meditation, because like we get out of our heads a lot and we go other places that are just not productive for our healing. And it's all about just staying in the moment. And I feel like yoga has given me a whole new world of opportunities, really.
Yeah, it didn't start that way. You didn't know anything about it, but somehow you found yourself there. And I'm curious about that because I mentioned that personal development courses that I did at the very beginning. And I had no idea that I should do a personal development course. I just had a lot of time on my hands. And a friend of mine just said, hey, there's this course running. I reckon you would appreciate it. And after being at home for 6 months doing nothing, I thought, okay, I'll go wherever you tell me. I really don't care what it is. Could have been a cult for as much as I knew. And I just turned up and went to the course and attended and had that uncomfortable love-hate experience, and then integrated that the months to follow, and then started to think about, okay, what else can I learn? What else do I need to know to help me in this journey, get me out of my head and connect me to my heart and move me away from my old thoughts and the way that I used to give myself such a hard time over everything, and live with thought patterns that were from probably not even me. They were probably from my ancestors, and lived stressed and anxious and uh, just outwardly expressed positivity and all these things, but internally lived completely differently. Just not positive, not confident, uh, always worried, always concerned, always had doubts about my abilities. My lack of self-belief was just ridiculous, right? And then I've just gone because I had nothing better to do, and I couldn't be bothered being at home anymore. And then my life, literally, it was like a sliding door moment. I went into that course. 4 days later, I came out a completely different person. Now, what what was it like to go into the first yoga session? Because after a stroke, with a particular type of deficit that you had, that would not have been an easy physical experience. And I imagine, because I'm comparing myself now, I imagine that it would have been hard to deal with mentally, because I went to yoga after all my issues, and I never continued to continue with it, because I felt like it was just way too hard. It really it really made me aware of the differences between my left side and my right side now. And I was
Mm-hmm.
potentially trying to be mindful, but that kind of mindfulness was just highlighting the dramatic difference in how my left and right side felt. And that was uncomfortable for me to be in that space then. So, long-winded question.
That I think is an experience that a lot of people have after they have a stroke, either feeling like it's too hard, they don't like attention drawn to their body, they don't want to have to think about that imbalance, and that like it's a bit intimidating. I mean, the yoga world has to keep it real about that. Like, it's not exactly welcoming to disabled people, although they have things like accessible yoga that's like a totally different division of yoga that does, like handicapped and wheelchair stuff. But I always thought that was kind of like, I don't know why the yoga world doesn't integrate yoga more, I want to say easier, but more, I don't know. It's not the kind of yoga that I learned, and it's not the kind of yoga that I teach. So I tell people that, like, keep in mind that all yoga is different, and you have to meet a teacher that meets you where you are, and you have to find a class. It's a shame that there are not more classes that have different varieties of people. Say chair yoga should be taught more, in my opinion, because people, first of all, people are hurting themselves getting up and down off the floor. And even if you can do a downward dog on the floor, you're probably hurting your shoulders. You're probably not doing it right. No offense. And you're going to hurt yourself. And so lift up onto the chair or something and do it, on a table or something, which is what I tell people. Like, it doesn't have to be hard. It really doesn't. And that's kind of why I do what I do, because it bugs me that there's that consensus about it. I'm like, listen, if I could walk into a yoga class and do yoga, anybody can. Seriously, because well, I'll tell you that I took my first class and was basically hiding in the corner. And it was a class at a hospital. So it wasn't like a studio. It was like more like older people. And I think maybe there were like 6 people in there. So it was like really kind of empty. And the teacher was so kind to me. She was like, just stay in the back. Nobody's gonna see you. You don't have to be like, and I was like just in my glory back there, like doing my own thing. It was literally like a little corner. Like there was like a little wall and then like a little wall, and I was just back there. And it was like so, had I had a different experience, I might have never done a class again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so you're feeling like go in the corner, hide, just participate without anyone else sort of, without you feeling like you're slowing the class down or not keeping up. And that's,
Yeah. And to me, that's the way a class should be taught anyways. Like the room is pretty dim. People are not looking at you. There's no mirrors. So you're not like forced to look at you and stare at the imbalances. You're just there moving and breathing and doing whatever the hell you can do. And it doesn't matter if you can't do it. It doesn't matter if, I mean, nothing matters other than your fluid movement and your breath and your, I guess, your body. But I will say that after that, I wouldn't go into a class. I took privates with a friend that was doing it like kind of like cheaply because it's the only way I could afford it, for like almost a year, until I went into a group class, because I was like terrified to go into a studio with peers and be looked at. I mean, because I knew that that was going to happen. I was still wearing an AFO when I started yoga, and for like a good year into it, I was still wearing it. And you go into every yoga studio and they say, okay, take your shoes off, put your shoes at the door. Well, I can't walk without my shoe. I can't. So I'm hobbling in and I'm like, whatever, guys, like whatever. At that point, I don't even think I cared. I was just like, whatever. I was so in love with yoga that I just wanted to do it. And so then I just started taking like 2 or 3 classes a week for like a good few years and just like really doing it. And then I was like, I kind of want to know more about the practice and about why this feels so good and why I'm like walking without an AFO now and like moving my arm a little bit. So I was like, I should take the teacher training. Never really wanted to teach, because who wants to see a disabled yoga teacher up in front of a room? That was my mentality at the time, at least.
Yeah, I can understand that.
I'm not teaching. But after finishing the teacher training, I couldn't not teach. I got pulled into all these different classes, and I found out that who wants to see a stroke survivor teaching yoga? Like everybody does. Everybody does.
You got sucked in.
And yeah, and stroke survivors were finding me and like asking me tips. And then I went to like some support groups around my neighborhood and talked about it, and people were really interested. And so I was like, now I guess I have to teach if y'all are forcing me to come out. And so then I was like, this is obviously like a bigger thing than just me doing yoga. It's something that people do want to learn, and something that people like should not ever feel like they can't do it. And like that's my mission, is to just get people to see, get stroke survivors to see that they can potentially exceed any expectation that they might have had of where they could be. They can keep going. And that's what yoga does really, is it gives so much hope. It gives you so much, like, even if it's like the tiniest little movement. I was just working with a lady the other day, and she said, subtle movements lead to bigger movements. And I was like, it's true. It's true. And because we were doing such a simple movement, and I kind of could sense maybe she was a little frustrated by it, because it was like so minuscule, but I was like, please stay with it. Like, just stay with the movement. And then she goes, yeah, that's right. I did have a therapist that told me subtle movements lead to bigger movements. And I was like, exactly. That's exactly the idea of yoga. Is even if you can't move your arm, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're inhaling, lifting up from your shoulders and your arm doesn't go anywhere. You're still doing it. You're still sending the message. And that slightest little subtlest movement is something. You
Yeah.
can't ignore it. It's
Neuroplasticity is what it is. And then what that does is create pathways. And if you repeat that process, those pathways get reinforced and perhaps can lead to more neural connections. And then as a result, it could lead to a more pronounced movement. And then you just build from there. And it could take ages and it could take forever, but it is absolutely legitimate. It's what yoga used to do is it used to take advantage of things like neuroplasticity, but we had no proof. We couldn't prove it. So the East thought it was amazing because the East has been doing yoga forever. The West thought, what a bunch of weirdos. But now the science from quote unquote the West, has emerged to say, wow, look what we found out about movement, about yoga, about this thing called neuroplasticity. And now they've come together. These things have merged together. And it's completely legitimate. And everyone knows the benefits of yoga. What is interesting about teaching it, though, and how you got sucked into teaching it? Well, I went to that particular 4-day course to learn about this concept of head, heart, and gut intelligences. It's called the M-braining. And then from there, the guys go to me, well, you should do the trainer's training. And I thought, well, what do I know? 4 days ago, I didn't know my bum from my head. And now you're telling me I need to do this trainer's training. And again, I just said, yes. All right, I'll do it. But what I found when I did the trainer's training and then ran some of my own courses, what I found was that it deepened my understanding and the knowledge that I had about this particular methodology that I had learned. So teaching often deepens your own practice. It's a really important part of doing a practice, I feel. The missing part of any practice is the fact that some people haven't taught it to other people yet, and they just go and participate in it. Getting better at something, I think, needs to have a component where you're teaching another person and trying to explain to them what you are hoping that they're going to get out of it. Did you find that when you became a teacher?
I don't know if you're familiar with a man named Ram Dass. He's actually, ironically, a fellow stroke survivor, but also like
What was his name? Tell me his name again.
Ram Dass, Ramdass. So he I don't want to get too much into his story because people can Google him if they want, but he ended up having a stroke later in his life, but he was a very famous meditation teacher and kind of
American
psychedelic 70s kind of.
Google says he was an American spiritual leader, Ram Dass, R-A-M, second word D-A-S-S, and born Richard Alpert in 1931. Also known as Baba Ram Dass, an American spiritual teacher, guru of modern yoga.
Yes. So the only reason I bring him up is because he talks a lot about service and about teaching yoga and about giving. And he says one of his most famous quotes is that, like, I teach yoga to work on myself and I work on myself to teach yoga. And because it is like that circle of you're teaching to learn and you're learning to teach, and it's absolutely that. And I think a big part of yoga is teaching it, because you learn so much of the practice via teaching it to others and articulating the language and all of that. So I don't know why I thought that I wasn't going to teach. That was silly. I think it was wishful thinking, like, I won't even, but like, I think intuitively I knew that
Yeah,
It was
you said about earlier, a little bit earlier, about how yoga is a little standardized. There's a lot of the same thing, and you don't get a lot of nuance in yoga. And I think the simple reason is because there's not a lot of stroke survivors teaching yoga. There's not a lot of people perhaps that have cerebral palsy that are teaching yoga and so on. And that is where the gap is, because people who haven't had a neurological condition or a physical ailment or some kind of a problem in their lives are not at that stage where they can apply yoga in that way, and they just apply it in the way that they know, and that's the majority of the population, right? And it these days the buzzword around it is inclusive. It's not inclusive enough, perhaps, is the buzzword, right? But the reality is it can't be inclusive because that person hasn't had a level of experience to create the right space for people like us to go there and feel
very
included.
interesting point that, quite honestly, I never really considered, but that's very true. And a big part of the reason why I do what I'm doing, and I'm continuing to get my next training to be like a teacher trainer, is so that I can train stroke survivors to be yoga teachers, because that is so true. I love that perspective on it, is that that's the reason that it's not opening these doors to more stroke survivors, because they really just don't know. And you can get the most qualified yoga teacher that went through a million trainings, that's trying her best to teach stroke survivors, but she doesn't have that body. She doesn't know what that's like. She's not going to have the same level of empathy that someone that actually experienced it has. And now that I think about it, that's like a really big problem, because there are not people that have like Down syndrome or cerebral palsy or anything teaching yoga on like a big platform where you're seeing it in like Yoga Journal or like, and that, but like, that's really bad. Like, that's, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a bad reflection on the yoga community, I think. And
And think about it, when you go there and you're doing your thing and people know you've had a stroke, well, it's going to encourage people with other deficits from different for different reasons to come along and feel comfortable and be involved, because they know that you know them. They know that you've been there. They understand. They appreciate it. And I believe that the reason there's no space there is because they're waiting for you, Rachel.
maybe, maybe. I mean,
They've got to be. Remember, and I'll give you the perfect, not that you need more convincing. You're already working in that space. But I think what I'm trying to say is you need to embrace the fact that you're a stroke survivor. And because that's a niche within yoga, and all your classes don't have to be for stroke survivors, but you need to embrace that part of it. And this is why, right? Because there are podcasts that are about stroke, but the people talking about them haven't had a stroke. I can't listen to those podcasts. The people who are speaking about stroke who haven't had a stroke are usually in the field of rehabilitation, neurology, in those spaces. And they're talking from that perspective, that mindset of stroke and recovery. And it's great because it brings people of a similar mindset together, and it gives them an insight that perhaps they didn't have. And it is a start. It helps teaching people. It helps teach people about how to how, for example, to support a stroke survivor with their particular skills, right? And it's great, but I can't listen to it. It's boring. It doesn't give me the type of conversation that you and I are having. So what did I need? I needed a podcast about stroke, recovery, and to talk about all the stuff that we all go through every day and that we've been going through for 10 years and 15 years, right? And what's beautiful is that I wasn't the only one that had that idea. Heaps of other stroke survivors have had that idea, and there's podcasts everywhere about stroke recovery, and they do it in their own unique way, because I can only do my podcast in my way and other people do it in their way. And I think that the space was waiting to be filled by stroke survivors. And now we're seeing the growth in that space. I started this podcast in 2017. I was still very unwell and I wasn't releasing many episodes at all. And since 2015, I think you're going to be episode 250, something like that. And what,
Oh,
and that went from, 10 people listening a month to last month, there was 8,000 downloads of my podcast.
wow,
So
that's amazing.
right, it's amazing. So this is what I'm saying. It's taken time. It's taken between 2017 and now. And the only thing that has really made it work is that I'm just talking to people like you every day about stroke recovery, and I'm doing it consistently. And they're finding me now. I was yelling about it at the top of my lungs at the beginning, but now it's the other way. Now people are finding me. And like yourself, you reached out. I'm not sure how you found it. It's not really relevant, but it's like the example. It's how things grow. And this is the space that not only you, a yoga instructor who's had a stroke, can fill a similar space in this world, but then other people who I hope are listening to us and they haven't got a yoga idea, they've got another idea for stroke, are going, should I give that a go? Now, I don't know about you, but this is a question for you, but I'm going to tell you about my perspective. This has changed, the podcast has changed my life again, even more in a positive way. And sometimes it's really difficult to do it because I've got to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning to fit in people from the United States and people from the UK. And it's difficult for me to wake myself up to do a podcast, but it brings me a lot of satisfaction, a lot of joy, right? And then what that does is that has given me purpose in life. So I'm wondering about whether yoga has become even more than yoga for you, because it doesn't sound like you're just a yoga teacher still. It sounds like it's grown in ways that you never thought of and never expected.
You could definitely say that. It started as like a thing, like it was going to be a thing over here and I was just going to do this thing. And now it's like the thing is everything. And it's given me a larger sense of purpose in my life. And it's changed, my household. It's changed so many different aspects of just my day-to-day life. And then meeting other stroke survivors who are curious about yoga is, honest to God, the most inspiring and coolest thing that I think I have ever witnessed in my life. Like, people are sending me pictures of them in yoga poses that like they've seen on my social media or they thought that they could do, and they saw me and thought that they could try. And I'm looking at these pictures and I'm just like, tears are coming to my eyes, because I'm thinking, like, first of all, like, it's really sad to me that people have not had this kind of support before, because like yoga and stroke survivors should have been like this from day one. It makes so much sense. It's almost just like, what are we doing by not teaching these very simple mindful movements and breathing techniques to someone that has had a brain injury? It's not like, I don't get it, but now that I'm seeing more people doing it, and it's like so uplifting. Like you said, it gives me a reason to get out of bed. It gives me a reason to stay motivated and do my own yoga, seeing other people do it. And so I feel like if that could just keep spreading, and keep spreading into person, like nobody would really have to suffer from having a stroke, because people would feel so empowered. Yeah.
In our emails before we actually jumped on the podcast, you shared a few things that you thought might be helpful. And we've spoken about yoga a fair bit. I think people know basically what yoga is, although there's different versions of it. Tell me about intention setting. Tell me about why that setting an intention anywhere in life about anything is important, and then how it applies to the work that you're doing.
Well, an intention, I guess the yoga journal tells us that doing yoga without an intention is like an empty practice.
Mhm.
You're not setting the intention, and an intention is kind of like a goal, but it's not really. Like an intention is something that you want to embody like right now. Like a goal is something that you are setting for the future. So when we come to yoga, we really are kind of forced to just be present with what we have right now. And your intention might be for more compassion on that day or whatever, or more compassion towards someone in a situation that's bothering you, or whatever you're going through at that moment that you sit and is running through your head. Your intention is kind of everything. Like you're intending on what you're going to embody through your practice.
Yeah.
And
It's kind of what you're working towards. It's like, I want to be happy, but you're not, the aim is not to find and remain happy. It's to work towards happiness and do the things that get you into a happier state more often, knowing that happiness is you're never going to arrive there. You're always going to have ups and downs, and good days and bad days, and moderately happy days and days where you're really sad. But that's
yeah,
like an intention for life could be, I want to be happy, but not as a destination. I just want to do the things that bring more happiness into my life. Now, for a yoga intention, I think that's a really good thing that you mentioned, because I never went into a yoga class with a good intention or any intention, and I think that that might have been something that I was missing, because my head was telling me, uh, "This is too hard. People are looking at you. You're delaying the class. You're wasting your money."
yes. Well, an intention is to me kind of similar to a mantra, because it's something that you can use in your head as a replacement to all of those thoughts, to keep yourself kind of in, because there's a lot of like bad cliches about yoga. Like when you get on your yoga mat, you're going to clear your mind, you're going to empty your mind.
Yeah.
That's not real. Your thoughts are going to be there. And the goal is to like notice the thoughts, choose the thoughts, replace the thoughts that you're not pleased with, and insert other thoughts there. You're never not going to think until you're like brain dead, and like buried in the ground. Then you're not going to have thoughts. But our mind is going, and probably gonna just go very quickly in a situation like that, when you're nervous and you're somewhere new and you don't know, that's totally normal. But if the teacher might have said to use, or if you had teachers just don't emphasize the like, you go into a class and then it just starts like,
Yeah.
but to have a conversation beforehand about like, why are you here?
Mm,
What is on your heart right in this moment?
yeah.
And to stay in that place can be really a game changer for people. It
Yeah.
can be. It
It would have been for me, actually, thinking about it, because everything that I've ever done that I've got a lot of benefit from that was hard, there was an underlying intention. So the podcast is a classic example. I mean, it's really hard to do it for 2017 to now, and do it in the last 3 years, one episode a week. It's really hard. But the intention is to fill a gap that didn't exist for me, that clearly is needed, and that potentially what this could move into is other things for me that are related to stroke recovery. And from my perspective, I think I can make a big difference. That clearly is my intention. And I knew it, maybe not at the beginning, but I definitely somewhere in that journey uncovered it. But every time I went to yoga, I knew I needed to be there, or I needed to be somewhere like that. And perhaps I was hoping that I was going to fall into the right version of it or the right teacher or whomever. But didn't I didn't find myself in that situation. A couple of them were taught by young girls who, fair enough, they were doing probably great work, but not for me. Another one was being taught by an older guy who, again, just used to say hello to everyone. We used to sit on the mat, and then it was straight into breathing, and then that was it. And the breath work wasn't really something that there wasn't a lot of conversation around it, so we didn't really appreciate the benefit of the breath. It was just about, okay, it was a bit of guided breathing, but there wasn't really a deeper understanding of it. I felt like perhaps the class was for somebody who had a deeper knowing about yoga when they got there at the beginning. It definitely wasn't for beginners.
But that's how every class at a studio is. So my question to the yoga community is, where is people supposed to go to actually learn? They're supposed to take $1,000 teacher training. That's, a year and a half. No, there should be more. And then I see studios do yoga 101, and so they try to do things where they will welcome the newbies and get people. But again, I'm like, why does it have to be a separate thing? Why can we not just have classes where teachers explain a little bit of this stuff? It's not hard to have a conversation at the beginning about what pranayama is, what we're going to do, what the techniques are called, why we're going to do it, talk them through, as opposed to just like, this is what we're doing, everybody quiet, nobody get up. And like, I don't know, yoga is just really whack sometimes. Like, it makes me mad because like, it doesn't have to be like that. It really doesn't have to be, but
tell me about
go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry. Okay. Go. You go.
More and more, I think it's becoming this like very population specific thing that only a certain group of people that, like you said, kind of already know what they're doing and kind of already have a background in it, that go to these studios and keep going to weekly, sometimes 2-3 times a day. These studios run classes and people are just going and going. And I'm just like, we can do better than that. We as a community, the yoga community, which I feel like I'm a big part of, and kind of speaking on behalf of stroke survivors in the yoga community, like, what the heck? We can do better. We can explain things better. It's like it's a secret. It's literally becoming like, it's like, you can't, and that's such bullshit, because this is like life knowledge. This is like, it's for everyone, and it should be shared in every situation just freely and not withheld so much. But you're so right that like, you go in there, you're doing the exercises and you're kind of wondering why, and then you're not getting an explanation and it loses its meaning. It's not really going to be beneficial if you're sitting there like, what the heck is this? What am I doing this for? This is uncomfortable. My back hurts. My head, has to go to the grocery store after this, and then go pick up the kids. And then none of that's helpful or productive yet.
Yeah. It's
what the classes are.
It's just the way it is. I know exactly what you mean. It's okay because it works for a lot of people, so it's still okay. I still feel like it's okay, and it opens a door for people to get deeper into the practice if they want to, and if they are drawn towards it. The other thing you mentioned was pranayama, which is breath work. Is that right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that, importance of that, and how that needs to be integrated, or why that's necessary. And then, is that associated to the vagal nerve? Is they work together?
Well, that's what I was going to say, that the reason that that is so important, that I do include a whole like module on that specifically, is because to me, that's like everything in stroke recovery. and recovery, quite frankly, from any trauma. Your vagus nerve is pretty much just holds on to everything that you have experienced, every scare, every fright, every panic. And the breath, I kind of say that the breath is like you're sending little love notes to your body. You're reminding your body that it's okay. You're safe. You're going to care for it. It doesn't have to worry. It doesn't have to panic. It's okay. And if you look at spasticity on a stroke survivor, it's that panic that sets into the body. And that is all the vagus nerve. That is all vagal nerve issues. It's not muscular. To talk about doing repetitions, or doing, Botox injections in the muscle to kill the muscle belly, none of that ever really made sense to me, because it's not, it's your breath. It's pranayama is breath control. So it's techniques that control the flow of your breath. So, you might be thinking, well, I'm breathing. Obviously, like I know how to breathe, but it's deeper than that. It's like control techniques. It might be like breathing in one nostril, breathing in the other, and alternating, or doing a forceful exhale through your nose, or doing like one of my favorites, the Ujjayi, the Darth Vader breath. You like constrict your throat so it comes out like how Darth Vader breathes, that like heavy breath. But that to me is really the essence of yoga, is the breath. So I tell people, like, even if they're not moving and they're doing an intentional breath work, and when I say intentional breath work, it just means that your attention is on your breath. Doesn't mean that you're doing anything particular. You're just, I'm sitting here. Oh, there's my breath. Noticing it. That's intentional breath.
Uh-huh.
So like the fact that you draw your attention to it is the start of that control. So you may be like, I don't know, sitting there breathing and your mind is like quacking at you, and you're taking a breath and you're trying to stay focused on the breath, and then a thought comes in and you're a bit distracted by the thought, and then you come back to the breath, and then you have a thought, and then you're distracted by the thought, and then you come back to the breath. And it's a cycle of training your brain to choose the thoughts that you're thinking, to choose, wait a minute, I don't have to, like, it's funny because we talk about the thoughts being like cars passing on the street, going by. And like, I tell people, don't get in the car. Like, wave, bye. Like, you see it. I see you. You're not getting in the car. You're not letting your attention follow that. You're simply allowing what is there to be there. And then perhaps shifting to another focus. If you want to say, include a mantra, or include something that's like going to bring you into a deeper practice, then you can start replacing those thoughts with new thoughts, or vibrational sounds, chanting, whatever you want to use, and kind of get out of that, like you said, that ancestral loop of shit that isn't even yours. Like, it's not yours. It's not your thought patterns. It's old stuff.
One of the best questions I think to ask myself is, who is, are they even my responses? Is that how I would respond? Or is that really what I think about that? Where did those thoughts come from? Where do I want to really think about come from, And I've found that a lot of the stuff that I've done that caused me, I'll use the word grief and anxiety and stress, I came from my parents. And not that they intentionally passed that on, they did it unintentionally. And when I think about my parents and where they got that from, they got it from their parents, and so on and so forth. And my parents grew up in rural Greece in from 1940. My dad was born in 43. My mum was born in 45. We're talking about in the thick of the Second World War. And it makes sense that their parents would have been stressed and freaked out and not able to be intentional and all that kind of stuff. They would have been survival mode the whole time. The country was occupied by Italian forces. My aunties and my mum had to live as little kids with Italian soldiers carrying guns, driving bad looking trucks and cars and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, you know, I get it. And then my grandparents, they grew up in the early 1900s, and there was a First World War. So it's kind of makes sense that majority of the things that I've received down in the generations in the last 100 or so years, it makes sense that most likely what they were passing down was to the next generation a way to survive what the last 100 years the same kind of thing. Because if it continues, if the pattern continues of destruction and war and unsafe situations, well, then that's what we need to pass down to these next generation. The thing about it is that I'm blessed to be living in Australia where we haven't experienced that. And it's not appropriate for me to live the life that the people before me had to live. It's not appropriate. It's not necessary. When it is appropriate and necessary, that's different. Shift into survival if that's what I need to do to survive. But right now, I can just pause that and I can let it go and I can just live the lifestyle that's necessary for the circumstances and the environment that I am being surrounded by. So that's what's really appropriate, is living to your environment. And then when you shift environments, is having the presence of mind to go, I am no longer in that environment. I can change the way I go about things. Sure, perhaps I will be a little more vigilant and I'll pay attention for signs about the past environment, that difficult one or that dangerous one, so that I don't find myself in the same situation and I'm not prepared for it. Perhaps I'll be a little more vigilant. But I need to pay attention to actually what's going on, and I need to live the version of lifestyle that's appropriate to the space that I'm in. That is what I learned after doing that intentional internal work, checking in with me, paying attention to my thoughts, paying attention to my breath, and being guided by people who had already done that kind of work. And this is the challenge with going to a yoga session when you're a 38-year-old stroke survivor and the person that's teaching me is a stunning 23-year-old who doesn't know shit from clay about life. And it's not her fault because she's amazing anyway and she's doing an amazing thing and she's probably has found yoga and it's probably feel that fulfilling and it's created some fulfillment in her life and allowed her to grow and the rest of it. But it's just not appropriate. What she's teaching is not appropriate to me because I am at a different phase and stage in my life. And that's what you're saying is about yoga tends to be there's not a lot of people like us delivering yoga, and therefore a lot of people who have stuff that they need to deal with can't relate to that stunning 25-year-old that is at the front of the class that's doing one after the other, 3 sessions in a row, and then she's doing it 5 days a week, and she has more energy than we can possibly ever have. And all you're thinking is, I feel completely, totally out of my league, inadequate, all the rest of it. And that's the reason why, partly. And I love that they're doing it, and I want them to continue doing it because there's a lot of people who they are supporting and helping, and they are filling the space for those people, and it's great. So there's no hard feelings or misunderstandings there, but it's clearly it's our version of people that we want to find that are going to guide us for the moment that we're in then, right?
Yes. And to be completely honest, it's not representative of yoga. That's not yoga. To
Mm.
have somebody that is not, well, I guess, I mean, you can't really be age discriminatory about people not teaching, under a certain age, but
Yeah.
yoga is,
You know what? I think you can be in a loving, compassionate way. Not that we don't want them to ever teach. It's that you need to teach at a level that's appropriate to your understanding and your skills and your experience in life. I think it's, for example, a car mechanic has to do an apprenticeship. You cannot just become the top car mechanic at 25. You haven't seen enough cars. You can't see the patterns. You don't know what, when people say, it's make that weird noise that goes click, 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 click. You haven't heard enough of those stories to know exactly what the weird noise is that they're talking about. So I don't think that it's discriminatory to say at 25, because maybe not everyone's as dumb as I was at 25, but I was dumb at 25. I don't think it's discriminatory to say at age 25, the level of yoga that you should be teaching should be somewhere around this space. You shouldn't be taking a class just for the sake of filling a class for the space provider who
yes.
needs their space filled. I think the space providers who are just putting anyone in there are doing
Yeah.
the practice a disservice. But then at the same time, Rachel, it all potentially leads to something more amazing for somebody anyway down the track. So
say that all yoga is good yoga in the
yeah,
world. So we
yeah,
can't say that this should not be so. I mean,
yeah. We're
I
having a
look at
philosophy.
goat yoga and like brewery yoga and like all these kinds of yogas that they have. And part of me wants to be like, oh my gosh, what is the yoga community doing? That's like,
Yeah,
you can't go to a yoga class and drink a beer and then say, you're
yeah.
whatever.
There's
But
an idea, beer yoga.
it is, I mean, it's a thing.
Oh my gosh, is it?
Yeah.
That should be illegal.
I mean, I'm a big believer that any yoga in the world is good yoga. So we just need, but there also is a standard, and that it's more of
Yes.
an issue of the teacher trainings. And I sometimes hate to bring this up because I sound like such a hater, but like there needs to be more time spacing in between people getting certifications and not being able to go and get a weekend
Yeah.
training that now you're just able to work and train. There needs to be continuing education credits and things that people are doing to keep themselves going, and then time space so that, like you said, you can acquire a listening ear for, oh, my back hurts when I do this. Then you know how to respond to that person, as opposed to like the 20-year-old that's looking at me when I walk into a class like, well, I hope you know how to modify for yourself. Because I had a teacher tell me that one time because she was like terrified of having me in her class, and I was like, don't worry, I'm a yoga teacher. And she was like, thank God.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is what we're getting in studios. Like, what if I was not a yoga teacher and I was just a stroke survivor coming in and said, hey, I had a stroke? She would have been like, no.
And teaching from that space of fear is not the right way to teach a yoga class anyway. And we're not dissing people. We're having a philosophical conversation about yoga, really, is what we're doing. We're just trying to get to the bottom of things that perhaps we can never get to the bottom of, but we're at least trying to, having a conversation about it, right? I know that you're planning or you're running a course or you're building a course. Tell me about that course that you're building, and you're looking to recruit stroke survivors. Is that right?
So because this is so like new, the idea is that I need to get more people willing to learn yoga, because my plan is to go on and to do bigger trainings with this and to take it to bigger venues and talk to bigger yoga communities. And if I don't have, or I feel like if I don't have a broad enough base of like comparing, working with different stroke survivors, I'm not going to be a good resource. Like, so my goal right now is to try to find people that either are doing yoga on their own or willing to learn a 4 or 6 week course of yoga and give feedback to benefit and help the whole program being written. Because like I said, there's not a whole lot of research that has been done on this, and the small study that was conducted was in like 2012, and it was like 12 people, and it was a post-stroke yoga balance study. So they studied yoga in people 3, 6, 9 months off their stroke, and saw and wanted to test how it would improve their balance. And the results were astounding, that in every case it improved the person's balance, regardless of what other things they were doing. Like they were doing other therapies, it improved. And then at the end of the study, they say more research needs to be conducted, except nobody's doing it.
Okay. So
Nobody.
what you're doing is you're building an 8-module course, and what you're hoping to do is get people to join so that you can support them through this course. And I'll speak about the modules in a second. And then from there, you want to get some feedback about what you might do. I imagine you might do a before yoga questionnaire, and then a after yoga questionnaire, and kind of get a bit of an understanding of what they noticed, what changed, what benefits they felt. And then you want to be able to report on that and then recruit more people and kind of keep learning about how to support stroke survivors in this way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the course is 8 modules, and it will consist of what is yoga, the history and tradition. We spoke about mantra and intention setting a little earlier. It's about
Yeah.
pranayama, which is breath work, and the vagal nerve. We spoke about that. It's
Yeah.
about asana, which is physical postures, which consists of 3 phases or flows: wheelchair, or chair, standing, and floor exercises. And then we've got meditation / mudra, sound healing and singing bowls, self-care and self-massage, Thai massage and dry brushing, and then finally caregiver yoga / partner yoga. So it sounds really comprehensive, because you're talking about all the things that make for oh my God, what's the word? Like a very holistic, to use another buzzword, holistic approach to recovery from something, in this case specifically stroke, right?
Yes.
These candidates that you want to encourage to come on board, where do they have to be? How do you recruit them? How do they access the program?
They can find me online. So it's all like Zoom based now, given COVID and everything. Like it's been, I guess, better to do it on Zoom. But yeah, online sessions can be scheduled with me on any of my social media or the website. That's just myogawill.com. People can just inquire about it. And like I said, I've been getting lots of responses. At first I kind of thought it would be mostly like older people that were new to yoga, that didn't really know what it was or how it would help them, and were just curious. But now I'm seeing that like there are a lot of stroke survivors that already have an interest in yoga and already might have had an interest before their stroke.
Yeah.
And don't know how, or maybe don't feel confident enough to get back into the world. And I'm hearing such horrible stories from people, like they call yoga studios, they don't get called back, they get looked at funny, they get told that they can't practice here, you know, if they can't do certain things, you know. And I'm just like, what the heck? What the actual heck? Because that should not be happening. It should not be happening at all. And so I invite people to come over to this area and like test something that's new. Obviously, like I want them to understand that it's really never been done before. So if you're going to try it and you're going to do a series of poses or a series of like mudras, those are like finger positioning. So you could do like finger counting or a finger whatever holding. But if you do that, then you give me feedback that then I can take to my superiors, tell people, hey, this is what it's doing for them. And I'm bound to think that there's some really like interested yoga therapists that would want to know how this is affecting the stroke community and would be very interested in hearing about, say, 50 stroke survivors that did yoga for 6 weeks, you know, and to see their results and to educate these teachers about how to treat us in yoga studios. Because you know, it was funny because one of the first ladies that I worked with on Instagram, I was telling her that like, well, she was telling me that she was so anxious about doing the session that we had scheduled. And I said something like, well, that's totally normal. You know, yoga is very intimidating. It's an intimidating world. And she stopped me and she said, I don't know if I would agree with that. I think that the yoga community is intimidated by us. And not that like that we should be intimidated by them. And it really struck a chord with me because it was something that I had never considered. But I was like, I think you're right. I think they really don't know what to do with our population. And so they do nothing. And we feel like, shit, we don't have a place here. But in reality, it's their loss and they're losing this experience. But I hope to kind of bridge that gap a little bit and bring people more together so there doesn't have to be this huge divide between like yourself and say just a regular or like a 20-year-old guy that's going into a class, you know, totally fit, that might be very drawn to that teacher because, you know, he's whatever. And that's fine. That's great. I wish that environment well. There's a place for that, but there needs to be also, like I said, a bridge that's built between the brain injured community and yoga studios, yoga therapists. This like buzzword that like yoga therapy is like, you know, going to be like the doctors of the future and like all that stuff. Like, yes, but how about they actually like spend time with people? Because that it's like we talked, I think maybe like in the beginning of this neuroplasticity was so new. And people at first kind of thought that yoga was just this weird Eastern thing. This like, oh, I'm gonna like, you know, sit and like make myself into a pretzel. And it's just not, it's not that. It's not that like, and neuroplasticity changed all of that for us because like you said, now people are actually able to say, wait a minute, that's science.
Yeah.
That's not huey, goofy stuff. That's actually science. And so what America and probably other parts of the world are doing now and kind of like rapidly, I think, is they're trying to study yoga. They're trying to study it, quantify it, qualify it, you know, make it into like okay, so if you have high blood pressure and you're going to a yoga class or a yoga therapist, or your doctor, say in 5 years from now, writes you a prescription to go to see a yoga therapist to get yoga as a prescriptive therapy for whatever you're going through, they will have like almost like a directory of things to look through that they've studied in order to treat you. And that's what they're doing now. And Harvard did a study on yoga, trying to find poses, trying to say that this pose was going to do this for you. And they like hooked people up to all kinds of monitors that, okay, if you're in Warrior One, it's working, you know, this, and this. And they were going to put it in a book and put it in a file. But what they found was that every person that they did, it was different.
Yeah.
So they couldn't chart it. And so, I mean, I think that's kind of
the point. That's the point of it, is everyone
Isn't
gets
it?
their own experience going there and their own version of healing and recovery and aha moments and whatever. That's the point of it. The point of it is not to have it
in a mold.
do this one and get that,
Yeah.
do that and get that. That's no point, because then going to yoga is wrong. You don't go to yoga to got what the other guy got. You go to yoga to get what you're going to get. That's the point of it. It's supposed to be.
That's why I feel like stroke yoga like is something that is so easy, because it's simply looking at the individual person for who they are and adapting a pose for them and talking to them in a language that they can understand for their needs. And it to me, that's not like rocket science. It's like what we should have been doing to begin with anyways. And so now it's like, well, yeah, like you can't look at a yoga picture and be like, I want to do that pose.
Yep.
I want to get into that pose. I'm going to work towards that pose. You don't have that body. You don't have that body, and you should not be
aspiring to that pose.
Right. Trying to get into that pose. You need to come at it. And that's why I teach in such like a different way, that I think sometimes it puts people off a bit, because a lot of times we're really not doing much of anything. And so people often feel very like antsy, like they want to move, they want to talk to me, they want to get something going. And I'm just like, no, we're just going to sit. We might place a hand on the rib and like take a breath in or out or move one direction, but it's such subtle movements that like you couldn't possibly leave a session and say like, I couldn't do that. You know what I mean? Like, because you're doing literally what you can do.
That sounds like my kind of yoga.
Right. Well, it sounds like the kind of yoga that humanity needs right now. Is just like a gentle, let's just move with your breath and feel any tense areas, tight areas. Try to relax and try to strengthen what might need to be strengthened, but it's in such like a non-imposing, non-direct cueing way. It's just like letting you find your own way there, letting you find the way into the breath pattern, and finding really what I call like comfort in the pose and being able to be there. And if somebody, I mean, it's just why it breaks my heart so much, because like when we go back to the sutras and we look at the sutras talk about asana as being steady and comfortable. And that's all they say about it. There's 196 sutras that we're given of yoga, and there's 2 that reference asana. And one of them is that it's steady and comfortable. So if you go into a class and you're feeling like you can't do it, I would say that maybe you're not actually doing yoga. You're doing some other workout thing that is not really yoga, because if you're not steady and comfortable, you're not in an asana. You're You're not. You're doing something else, but the teacher is having you be in that's probably going to hurt you later. And that's not yoga. That's not, like, I don't mean to trash talk or say that this is not valuable, because it could potentially lead someone into the realm of finding it. So I have to acknowledge that. But when you look at the tradition of yoga, like really the tradition from like the sutras and the Vedic texts that we have about this just human knowledge, this knowledge of life, really, because that's what yoga kind of is. It's like the science of life. And it's like saying that you don't know how to live, but saying that you don't know how to do yoga is basically like it's not possible. You're living, so you're doing it, so it is possible to do it. You just haven't found the right avenue to do it in. And that sucks to me, because too many people walk away from the practice like that's not for me.
Rachel, I think you're going to do all right, because I think a lot of people understand where you're coming from, and this thing is really this thing that's going to help you get over the line is your passion. Bring people in. It's going to encourage people to come in. And really, there's clearly a lack. There's a space that you need to fill. I believe that you're already starting to fill that space, but you're looking at it from a way that's a lot deeper. So it's not just about doing and having spaces for people to come. It's also about reporting on the feedback that people give about how they experience it, so that you can then create a better environment and different kinds of lessons, and
that's what it really is,
more
honestly.
inclusive.
Yes, because that learning piece has got to be there for teachers to teach stroke survivors. There has to be like, okay, I understand that because every stroke is slightly different. I like to try to emphasize that strokes kind of carry a common theme. So there's kind of pockets in the body that are more affected than other. And I'm finding that there's a lot of themes within them, within strokes, even strokes that are very different. There's themes. There are common shoulder issues, certain joints seem to be affected more, certain areas. And that fascinates the crap out of me. Like, I just started an anatomy yoga training course today that I'm hoping to like really beef up some of my anatomy, because I'm so intrigued by this stroke body and like why it does what it does, and learning about the nerves and learning about the breath. We studied the diaphragm today for like 2 hours, just like the function of the breath and how it lifts and how the vagus nerve, receives all those messages and could potentially relax limbs or bring back movement to limbs just with the flow of the breath. Just with sending the breath there. I mean, how incredible is that?
It is incredible. And it's hard to get your head around it, because it's not a head thing. You can't, thinking your way through that is going to be really difficult. It's actually something you have to experience and you have to do. It's something that is not a head-based thing. It's a bodily experience. And it's it's particularly complicated for some people to get into that space where they deeply understand that it's not something to work out in your head. It's something to do and experience, and then you have an internal reference for it, not just what somebody told you for it. Your Instagram seems to be doing quite all right. We've got 17,000 or 18,000 nearly followers. Have you reached out to them to recruit some of the people that you're looking for? And how are you going in that recruitment process? How many people have you got?
Well, I kind of don't think it's going that well. I don't think that people always receive me quite well. And I kind of just, I don't know even how I do it. I kind of try to read the room, so to speak, and see who may be interested in it, who may be seeming like they're interested. And then I might reach out and say, hey, do you want to try a session? And then I might get, no, I already did yoga, it's not for me, or I don't have time, or
Yeah.
I don't know that it would be helpful for me. And so I'm getting a lot of like pushback, I guess, which is to be expected, I guess. But then
Mm.
I get a lot of like, I really want to learn. I really
Mm.
want to learn. I really want to try. I just had a lady reach out and say that she had aphasia and she wanted to learn chanting, which was like incredible because I haven't even like started to promote that a lot. Like I do my own chanting, but I haven't really like put it out there. But she saw it and thought that it might be good for her. And so she reached out and I was like,
Yeah.
this is
So,
what I'm
okay.
talking about.
The reason I ask is because we'll put the word out right now to people who are listening right now to reach out to you. They can go to myogawill.com. I'll have the links in the bio. And they can go to on Instagram, my yoga will as well, and they can follow you there. Again, they'll get the links from the bio. They'll get your links from the show notes of this episode, and perhaps what they can do is just reach out to you via Messenger or the contact form on your website. And I might even do a post on my Instagram and just say that Rachel is looking for 8 people who have had a stroke to participate in a program of yoga,
Yes,
and
that would be helpful
for the purpose of learning. How's that
for the
sound?
purpose of learning. Yes, yes, that would be very helpful, I think.
All right, that's what we're going to
Sure.
do. Rachel, thank you so much for
Thank
reaching
you.
out and being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on today's episodes. To learn more about my guests, including links to their social media and other pages, and to download a full transcript of the entire interview, please go to recoveryafterstroke.com/episodes. If you would like to take the course, 5 Foods to Avoid After Stroke, go to recoveryafterstroke.com/courses and get on board now. If you would like to support this podcast, the best way to do it is to leave a 5-star review and a few words about what the show means to you on iTunes and Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, comment below the video, like this episode, and to get notifications of future episodes, subscribe to the show on the platform of your choice. If you are a stroke survivor with a story to share about your experience, come and join me on the show. The interviews are not scripted. You do not have to plan for them. All you need to do to qualify is be a stroke survivor or care for someone who is a stroke survivor, or you are one of the fabulous people that support stroke survivors. Go to recoveryafterstroke.com/contact, fill out the contact form, and as soon as I receive your request, I will respond with more details on how you can choose a time that works for you and me to meet over Zoom. Thanks again for being here and listening. I really appreciate you, and see you on the next episode.
Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamis. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation education program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.